Hi, today we're going to be learning how to calculate the surface area and volume of triangular prisms. Let's first start with reviewing how to calculate the area of a triangle. We know that the area of a rectangle is represented by A equals base times height. If we take a look at this grid over here, notice that we can outline a full rectangle, but this triangle cuts it in half. So, to fix our formula, let's just go ahead and divide all of this by 2. Another way that you might have seen it written is A equals 1/2 times base times height. These both mean the same thing. In this case, B represents the length along the bottom of the triangle. So our base is equal to 4. H represents the height of the triangle. So in this case, our height is equal to 3. Notice that the base and the height always intersect at a right angle. And let's go ahead and use this formula over here, although they will both get you the same answer. A is equal to 1/2 times our base, which is 4, times our height, which is 3. To simplify this, we'll leave 1/2 the same, and I know 4 times 3 is equal to 12. 1/2 of 12 is equal to 6. So this triangle has an area of 6. Let's take a look at this triangle down here. Here is my base. This time the base has a length of 7. And notice that neither of these two side lengths are my height of the triangle. In fact, this is the height of the triangle. Notice that the base and the height always intersect at a 90-degree angle. So in this case, my height is equal to 2. And plugging it into the area formula, 1/2 times base, which is 7, times 2, which is height. Simplifying this, I get 1/2 times 7 times 2 gets 14. Half of 14 gets me 7. So this triangle has an area of 7 squares. Now let's go ahead and calculate the surface area and volume of this triangular prism. I'm going to go ahead and start off with surface area. So just like with rectangular prisms, I want to first start off by identifying each of my sides. So I notice that I have this top side and this bottom side, which are both triangular bases. So I'm going to go ahead and write top and bottom, and these two are the same. Next, I notice that I have this side over here that's facing the front. I also have this side over here on the right, and finally this side over here in the back. So all of these names are pretty arbitrary, so I'm just going to call each of them the side. So I have 3 other sides that I need to solve for. In total, I have 5 sides in a triangular prism. Let's go ahead and solve for each of these sides, starting with my top and bottom. And in case it's kind of difficult to see, I'm going to go ahead and draw out the triangles on the top and the bottom. So here I have my right angle. This length down here is 15, and then this length right here is 8. So using the area of a triangle formula, I'm going to go ahead and start off by doing 1/2 times my base, which is 15, times my height of the triangle, which is 8. And this gets me 1/2 times 15 times 8, which is 120. Half of 120 is 60. So if I have 60 on the top, that means I also have 60 on the bottom. Next, let's go ahead and do this front side over here. So for this side, this is a rectangle. So we are just going to need the base multiplied by the height. So my base is 15, and the height of this prism is 12. 15 times 12 gets me 180. All right, next I have this side all the way on the right. The dimensions of this side are 8 by 12. So I'm going to do 8 times 12. That gets me 96. And finishing off with this side in the far back. The dimensions of this side are 17 by 12. So I'm going to do 17 times 12. And that gets me 204. Now that I have all 5 sides of my triangular prism, I'm just going to add them all up. So I had 60 plus 60 plus 180 plus 96 plus 204. All of this added up is a total of 600. And my units are yards, so I'm going to go ahead and write yards squared. And that's my final surface area. Now let's go ahead and break down what we just did. So I'm going to start by labeling my dimensions of the triangular prism. So here we had the base, and this was the height of the triangles on the top and the bottom. So what we started off by doing was multiplying 1/2 times the base times the height. And we did that 2 times. So if I were to write that down, it might look something like this. 1/2 times base times height, but then multiplied by 2. Notice that if I multiply 1/2 times 2, these actually will just cancel out, and all I'm left with is base times height. So let's go ahead and write that down and consolidate that. I'm just going to go ahead and write base times height. But we're not done yet. We still have these 3 sides over here. So let me finish labeling each of my dimensions in this prism. So we can call the 12 the height of the prism, L for length. Each of these 3 sides of the triangular bases will label as S. So we can call this S1, this would be S2, and then here would be our S3 for each of the sides of the triangle. So what we've done over here is we've taken each of the sides and multiplied it by the length. So S1, S2, and S3 all multiplied by L. And to put this into our formula down here, we're essentially adding each of these terms. So S1 times L plus S2 times L plus S3 times L. But notice that we have an L in each of these 3 terms. So what we can do is we can actually factor out this L from each of the 3 terms. And let's consolidate this part. So I'm going to do plus L factored out, parentheses, S1 plus S2 plus S3. And all of the stuff in the parentheses is essentially the perimeter of this triangular base. And this is the formula that you typically see on Google or in a textbook. Now let's go ahead and talk about volume. So for volume, just like we did with the rectangular prisms, I want to take one of the layers, which is essentially either the top or the bottom. In this case, it's going to be 60. So I'm taking one of the layers, and I want to multiply it by the number of layers that I have in this prism. In this case, it would be the height of the prism, which is 12. So remember, these are the amount of layers that I have. 60 times 12 gets me 720. And that's yards cubed. So that's my volume. So essentially, what we've done is we've taken one of the layers, which mathematicians will call this the area of the base of this prism. This is usually represented by a capital B. So we've taken the area of the base B, and we multiplied it by the height of the prism, which in this case we represented using the letter L. So that's the area of the base times the height of the prism. But let's go ahead and rewrite this in terms of the variables that we labeled. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this as the area of the base is the area of this triangle, right? And we know that the area of a triangle is 1/2 times base times height. So I'm going to go ahead and replace it with 1/2 times base with the lowercase b times our height of the triangle. And this is all multiplied by L, which is the height of the prism. To consolidate all of this, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it as 1/2 times base times height times L. And this is the volume formula for a triangular prism. All right, now what if we have a triangular prism that looks like this? I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this, and we're going to start off with surface area. So for the surface area, let's go ahead and identify all of the sides of this triangular prism. So just like before, I noticed that I have a top and a bottom, which are both triangles. So I'm going to start there, top and bottom. I noticed that I have 3 sides as well. Here's the first one, Here's the second one, and here's the third one. So I'm going to go ahead and label side, side, and side. Now that I have all my 5 sides listed, let's go ahead and calculate the areas for each of them. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with the top and the bottom. And if it's a little bit difficult to see the triangular bases, I'm going to go ahead and draw out down here as well. So notice that my base right here is 19, but my height, they actually give me my height here. It's 6.6. All right, so using these two numbers, I'm just going to plug it into my area formula. So 1/2 times the base, which is 19, times the height, which is 6.6. All of this gets me a total of 62.7. So if the top is 62.7, that means the bottom is 62.7 as well. Now let's do this front side next. So for the front side, I notice that it's in the shape of a rectangle. So I'm going to do base, which is 19, times the height of the prism, which is 20. So 19 times 20 gets me 380. Next, let's do this right side of the prism. So the dimensions for this rectangle are 8 by 20. 8 times 20 gets me 160. And then finally, this left side of the prism. The dimensions are 16 by 20. So I'm going to do 16 times 20 gets me 320. All right, adding up all of my 5 sides gets me 985.4 centimeters squared. And that's my final surface area. Now, what if we wanted to use this formula instead? Well, I'm going to go ahead and start off by labeling each of my dimensions here. So starting with base and height. We already knew that this was the base and this is the height of the triangular base. So that means in my formula, I would start off with base times height, which is 19 times 6.6. I need to add that to all of this over here. So let's go ahead and finish labeling our prism. So the height of our prism is going to be represented by L, and then each of the 3 sides of the triangle are going to be labeled S. So here I have my first side, S1. Here's my second side. Here's my third side. And let's plug that into the formula. So I'm going to start with L, which I know is 20, parentheses, S1, which is 19, plus S2, which is 8, plus S3, which is 16. Now let's go ahead and simplify this. So if I do 19 times 6.6, that gets me 125.4. I need to add that to all of this simplified. So I'm going to leave the 20 as is and just add all of these terms together. So 19 plus 8 plus 16 gets me a total of 43. 20 times 43 gets me 860. So I'll have 125.4 plus 860 is equal to 985.4 centimeters squared. So notice that we get the exact same surface area. Now let's talk about volume. So for the volume, I'm going to take the area of this triangular base, which we know was 62.7. So that's one of the layers. And how many layers do I have again? 20. So multiplying this gets me 1,254, and that's centimeters cubed. Now let's see if we can use this formula to get the same volume. So I'm going to start with 1/2 times the base, which is 19, times the height of the triangle, which is 6.6, times L, which is the height of the prism, and that's 20. If I multiply all of these together, again, that gets me the same thing, 1254 centimeters cubed. And that's how you solve for the surface area and volume of a triangular prism. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment with any questions or topics you'd like to see next. Bye!